In most of the world, Parliament is where politicians talk past each other.
The Prime Minister's answer had nothing to do with the questions, but it had nothing to do with sex. I wasn't thinking about sex at all.
How dare you attack the physical appearance of another person?
Are your
Move
feelings hurt?
her words down.
Aww.
Oh, girl, baby girl.
And then there's Singapore. Let's hear lawmakers from Singapore's biggest opposition party.
Mr. Speaker, I'm supportive of the aforesaid changes and commend the significantly more enlightened attitude taken by policymakers.
In Singapore, opposition lawmakers can make headlines simply for voting against the government. The current opposition lawmakers went more than a year without formally opposing a single law. And even disagreements are almost always constructive.
But I think we have to frame a conversation on sustainable growth. And then I think there'll be support for many policies that the government proposes.
I fully agree with Mr. Pritam saying that we are all about sustainable growth.
Some of the differences between the PAP and the Workers' Party are of methods and approaches, and we must agree to disagree. But there may be a few issues where there is consensus on the final outcomes, and yet others where there is none. This is how a parliamentary democracy works. So the Workers' Party supports the budget.
And yet this constructiveness hides something unusual. When Singapore's parliament meets, anyone with half a brain knows the result. The ruling People's Action Party has held at least 90% of seats since independence. Any legislation it supports will pass. Such is the strange state of Singapore's parliament. A chamber where everyone knows the result before it begins, and where that somehow makes the debate more serious, not less. And this isn't changing. The opposition isn't trying to take power. They have a different job entirely.
What we are trying to deny the PAP isn't a mandate. What we're trying to deny them is a blank check.
What's going on here? Why isn't the biggest opposition party trying to take power? And does it hold any lessons for the rest of us? To understand Singapore's parliament, you need to understand what Singapore politicians are actually rewarded for. If there's one person who can speak to that, it's Chee Soon Juan. In 2001, Chee's vote share was 20%. He was the poster child of opposition candidates in many other countries.
Mr. Goh! Mr. Goh! Come here, Mr. Goh! I want to talk with you! Come here! Where is our money, Mr. Goh? You can run, but you cannot hide!
Fast forward to 2025. Same man. Vote share? 47%. What changed? Chee himself admits it.
And if I had watched it on TV, I wouldn't have liked myself.
He learned, the hard way, that mudslinging rarely produces results in Singapore. But why not? It comes down to one of the most powerful forces in human society: trust. Globally, trust in government is low. Across OECD countries, only about 39% of people trust their government. In Singapore, it's almost double that. The gap is so large, so inexplicable, and so unbelievable that Singapore's founding father had to explain this to his country.
Americans consider all political leaders potential crooks and criminals. No, they start off. You are elected, dangerous man, likely to be dishonest crook. Find more about him. And they write in derogatory terms.
When citizens broadly trust their government to be competent and not corrupt, it's difficult for others to tell them that their trust is misplaced. It's even more difficult to campaign on tearing it all down. People want politicians who make the machine run better. That's why the only opposition party with seats in Parliament, the Workers' Party, is, policy-wise, remarkably similar to the PAP.
We could have written the same manifesto.
We like that.
The audience laughs, but both men mean it. And Singaporean voters, they like it too. On Reddit, one Singaporean voter summed it up bluntly.
PAP light is exactly what I want as opposition. I don't want nutcases or radicals. I want the PAP to keep their feet on the ground so they don't get complacent.
This is the core logic of Singapore politics. Voters aren't trying to overthrow the system. They are trying to calibrate it. And this trust didn't arise in a vacuum. Singapore's 4 prime ministers have spoken many times about trust.
You break faith, they distrust you, you're out. I have lasted because I learned very early on, never say something which I'm not going to do.
The key factor is trust. Trust between the government and the people. And that begs another question, how do you build up trust between the people and the government? So communication.
Trust in government, and in the political leadership in particular, is founded on the people knowing their leaders will always have their backs.
We upheld trust in our fellow citizens, and that was what enabled us to find our way through the pandemic.
And they're absolutely right. But trust is easier to damage than to build. And even Singapore's government has learned this the hard way.
Let me begin with a mea culpa. We acknowledge our error in not stating that data from Trace Together is not exempt from the Criminal Procedure Code. I take full responsibility for this mistake. And I deeply regret the consternation, the anxiety that was caused by my mistake.
This is Singapore's Minister for Foreign Affairs opening a parliamentary speech by admitting he got something wrong. The issue? The government's COVID contact tracing app, Trace Together, had been promised to Singaporeans as a public health tool only. It turned out that police could access the data too, and the public found out not from the government, but from a parliamentary question.
It comes down to a question of trust, the perceived lack of empathy over the public's privacy concerns. It is apparent that the government's handling of this matter has eroded trust from some members of the public.
Notice what Singh is doing here. He's not calling for resignations. He's not making it a political football. He's naming the problem precisely and demanding accountability through the institution. That's the fragility of trust in action. And also, remarkably, its resilience. Before voting for the bill, Singh asked Singaporeans to use the app.
Please download the app, use the token, because it's the safety of the entire community that's at stake insofar as COVID-19 is concerned. Whatever concerns that you wish to raise, I'm sure your parliamentarians will bring them up in Parliament, and certainly the opposition in Parliament will do so. Thank you.
Even in the middle of a trust controversy, the opposition didn't try to undermine the policy itself. It tried to fix it without breaking public confidence. Compare this with many other countries where resisting similar measures was seen as a badge of honor. And Singh is likely to be rewarded, not punished, by voters. Why? In Singapore, polling consistently shows that voters are primarily influenced by the candidate, not the party. Who is this person? Are they credible? Will they actually show up? In countries like Canada, it's almost the reverse. The party matters enormously. You vote Liberal or Conservative. The individual running in your district doesn't matter as much. That single difference changes how politicians behave. In Canada, politicians are rewarded for being good party loyalists, staying on message, attacking the other side, rallying the base.
When will he stop his out-of-control spending?
Strongest credit rating in the world, AAA. This side of the House believes in Canada.
In Singapore, politicians are rewarded for being genuinely competent and locally trusted.
I wish to explain why raising GST is a bad idea at this point in time, how it will also be bad for working families, and what we can do as alternatives to raising GST to meet our fiscal needs.
So when opposition politicians face a choice, do I grandstand and attack, or do I master the policy brief? The incentive is clear. No prizes for guessing which they choose in each country. But what if there's fundamental disagreement?
When we talk about the reserves, we're not talking about raiding them. It's about slowing the growth slope of the reserves. And when we look at alternatives, what are we looking at? Healthcare, aging, the same Singaporeans who worked hard, who toiled hard.
Mr. Singh says we're not talking about bringing the reserves down. But as you know, in financial investments, there's no certainty about reserves going up. It can come down for any number of reasons.
No shouting, no theatrics, just a quiet fight over what prudence actually means. In most countries, that kind of argument gets drowned out by partisan noise. Before major debates, Workers' Party MPs are known to spend weeks stress testing their numbers because they know the PAP will shred any weak argument to the floor. A bad performance isn't just embarrassing, it's electoral poison.
There's still a need to have an independent inquiry.
Commission of Inquiry is a serious business. So, Mr. Leong, can I ask you, which part leaves you concerned?
The whole case probably requires more investigation. But if you think that that is enough, then I will withdraw my proposition or recommendation for an independent inquiry.
It is not right to come here and say, I think that a commission of inquiry is necessary. I cannot tell you why. I cannot tell you what my concerns are. I cannot pinpoint anything. I make no allegations. But in general, it's good to have a commission of inquiry.
And the stakes are even higher for the ruling party. Parliament, for the PAP, is part of a talent pipeline. You don't get promoted to minister by being a good party soldier. You get promoted by performing.
You not only need to have policy mastery, but you also need political skills, the ability to communicate effectively. You need to exercise leadership and execute effectively.
In other words, Singapore's parliament is a rubber stamp that is taken very seriously. When people talk about Singapore's government, it's easy to fixate on surface level things. That voters have given the government a blank check and trust them to write a fair number every single time. Or that the PAP has so much power that if a less benevolent leader rose to power, there's no limit to the damage they could do.
You can amend the constitution in one afternoon on a certificate of emergency.
But look deeper and you find something profound about what actually sustains good governance over decades. In the beginning, Lee Kuan Yew and his generation shaped Singapore by demanding something rare in politics.
Everything works. Whether it's water, electricity, gas, it just has to work. If it doesn't work, I want to know why. And if I'm not satisfied, as I often was not, the chief goes.
And over time, those demands didn't just shape the government. They shaped the people. They shaped what Singaporeans expected from politicians. Indeed, when Singaporeans complain about a train delay, they are not being difficult. They are enforcing a standard. So in a strange way, it's the voters who are carrying that legacy forward. When Singaporeans punish grandstanding and reward competence, when they demand honesty, delivery, and no corruption, when they ask not for revolution, but for responsibility, they are shaping the environment their politicians have to survive in. And that may be the deepest reason Singapore's parliament works the way it does. So whether you're in Singapore, Canada, or anywhere else, you're not just watching the game. You're helping to set the rules. And the question isn't just who wins the next election. It's this: what kind of game are you choosing to play? Thanks for watching.